What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Will of DDT. Today we have a Red Zoro deck profile for you. Took this deck to locals this past weekend. It was an 18-player local. Was able to take second. Lost to Red Law in the final round. It was close. We both got down to 0 life, but my opponent took it in the end. But this deck is incredibly consistent, incredibly competitive, and it's a lot of fun. It gets much better in the next set. Right now, I would say it is the weaker of the two straight red leaders, but again, it's still a threat. I mean, there's beauty and simplicity. You can just see it in the one-line ability. All of your characters gain 1,000 power for just one Dawn attached to this card. This really does just put a lot of pressure on your opponent. It makes cards that are sub 5k power live with minimal Dawn allocation. 4k becomes 5, anything 3k or less, you just attach 1 to 2 Dawn, and now your opponent has to worry about not only your heavy hitting rush cards, but also your smaller bodies that can now hit life. So it's very resource intensive for your opponent and very resource efficient for you. And just knowing that this deck has longevity in the sets to come is worth investing in and learning how to play. And it never hurts that it's fun. So before I start going into the deck list, I want to preface this by saying my deck is all gas, no brakes. I do not subscribe to having blockers in this deck. I don't think they're needed. I feel like they slow you down. I feel like the peace of mind that you would get of having a blocker on board cripples you into complacency. You really just want to throw yourself at your opponent. That linear playstyle, even though your opponent knows what's coming, they do not have the resources or the capacity to stop it more often than not. I mean, the best defense is a good offense, and nothing is more obvious than when you see how this deck is built. So we'll start with the 1 cost. First, we have 4 Otama. Love this card. Otama generates value no matter where she is. If she's in your hand, she's a 2k blocker, and then when you play her on the board for just 1 cost, she subtracts 2k from any one of your opponent's characters. And power manipulation for red is key because a lot of their board control and removal effects are restricted to power, not really play cost, which is huge. And when you can bring targets within a certain range, you're going to be able to clear threats or just pave your way to easy life hits. So love this card. After that, we have 4 starter deck Nami. This card is really good because it allows you to manipulate your rested Dawn, and that essentially gives you more than 10 Dawn. While every other deck is working with a cap of 10, you can exhaust your 10 Dawn, build up your board, utilize your events, and then still be able to attach rested Dawn given the number of these Nami you have on board and be able to make some powerful swings. So that's never a bad thing, and it always helps that there's a counter. I feel like the counter value cannot be downplayed enough in this game. That's what allows you to keep the boards you want, to the board makers sticking to the board. After that, we have 4 of the Searcher Nami. I'm a little lukewarm on this card. I mean, search is never a bad thing in a TCG. It's just a really powerful mechanic, especially when you need to find your pieces, set your hand up for success, and get the resources you need to be able to close a game out, or just at the same time put you in a position to close the game out. Now, this card on play, you're going to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and pick out a Straw Hat type card. That's characters and events, so you're picking exactly what you need. What hurts is, since there are no cards that I consider useless in this deck, bottom decking the other 4 hurts no matter what. But at the same time, you're weighing your options and you're taking what you need for the given situation. This deck does not really require you to plan 14 moves ahead. You're really playing for the turn or the turn after because you're just pushing every chance you get. And again, almost all cards have a counter value. Moving on to the 2 costs, we have 2 of the OP01 2 cost Luffy. Now, this card I like because it gives me a turn 2 play while still being a 1k counter in hand. This continues the rested Don manipulation playstyle. Drop this as a 2 cost, and then the two that I spent to play it, I can attach to it. I mean, it doesn't have rush, but it's live every turn. I give it 2k, it goes up to 5k, and then I attach one to Zoro. He's minimum 6k every turn that I'm pushing at my opponent's face. So again, matches the aggression, but also helps keep you alive with the counter value. After that, we have our first hyper aggressor. We have the Rush structure deck Sanji. A lot of other deck profiles I saw for Red Zoro either has this card at 2 or just doesn't have him at all, which I think is pretty crazy. I think for 2 cost, 4k drop, and then just only adding 2 more when you can also add your rested Don, depending on whether you have Nami or not, you're pushing for at least 7k. The 2k that you attack to get him, you attach to give him rush, and then the 1k from Zoro. The turn he's played, essentially, you're pushing for 7k. So again, a very cheap, people would say, oh, it's actually a 4 cost. Even then, if you're doing the math, a 4 cost 7k rusher is always worth it. So it's never a bad card to play. After that, we have the 2k counter life Sanji, as I like to call him. So what this card does during your main phase, you can draw a card from your life to give him 2k and add 2 rested Dawn cards. So he's a monster. He's adding 4k to himself. And then again, with the Zoro, he's getting up to 8k. And the whole point of this deck is to kill your opponent before he kills you. So they're likely going to be aiming at your rested characters to help mitigate their loss. So you have your life as a resource. So if he's not in your hand that you're using for a defensive counter, you put him down, you draw your card, you get card advantage by using your life, which hasn't been hit yet more often than not, and then you have an 8k swinger. It's just dumb broken. After that, we have for Brook. Pretty self-explanatory. I mean, he has a good on play where you play him for 2 and then you can give 2 rested Dawn to your leader or your characters. So essentially, he can get played for free. You play 2 and then you put 2 on someone else. But defensively, he's a 2k counter. After that, we got 2 Gordon. Having played this, I think Gordon is really good. He's pretty toolboxy. He lets you manipulate your hand, bottom deck something you don't need to try to draw a card and fish for the pieces you need. Looking back, I mean, I think he's a pretty solid option, but if you want to switch out some of the cards in your deck, I would either take him out for 2 more Sanji or maybe even some Diable Jambos. Going into the 3 cost, we have Nico Robin. Arguably one of the best control cards in the game right now, given the card sample size we have. She's a 3 cost, 4k, attach 1 Dawn, KO one of your opponents with 3k or less power. I mean, just without any power manipulation, she's getting rid of most blockers in the game. Choppers, Beges, Black Marias, Killers. Now, comboed with Otama's power manipulation, or some people even like to run Round Table. I don't, but Round Table takes off 10k. They're live for Robin. So without Zoro, just on her own effect, she's swinging for 5k and killing something. With Zoro, she's swinging for 6k and killing something. And then with Otama and cards like Round Table, you're pretty much putting anything within your range to kill off a swing and then still be able to take life off. After that, we have 2 of the promo Luffy. This is just a better version of the 2 cost Luffy that we showed before. It's a 2k counter, has a similar effect, but it gains an additional 2k. So we'll bring it up to the camera and you can see here, attach 2 Dawn and this character gains 2k power. So for 2 Dawn, it's getting bumped up to 7k. Excuse me. And then with the Zoro ability, he's going to be swinging for 8k. And what's even better is that it's a 2k counter. You can argue running this at 4, dropping the other 2 Luffy, but I like having variability in play. I like to have options. I mean, if I have to go second with 2 Dawn, I want to have something to play cheaper, or I want to be able to have options in how I want to utilize my Dawn and not be restricted to just playing 3 because I have to. And then the best card in the deck, following his namesake, we have the King of Hell himself, Roronoa Zoro. Again, no explanation necessary. He's Rush. He's got 5k. He costs 3. Every time you play him, you might as well just play him like this because he's rushing the second he hits the board. And with the leader, you're hitting at least 6k every time. And then we have Uta. Uta is great depending on when she shows up in your hand. If you get her in your opener or catch her mid-game, she's fantastic because she helps you recycle some of your low-cost resources, get back some of your 2k counters, let you keep slamming the Zoro down. Excuse me. But late game, when your hand is pretty limited, she's all you got. She's pretty expensive. You're dropping 4k for 4 cost. You're getting something back in your hand, but you want to use that Dawn for something else. It feels bad getting her late game, depending on the board that your opponent's able to set up, because she's pretty low impact otherwise. But early to mid game, she's great at refreshing your resources. And now we have the captain himself, unblockable Luffy. Again, that's pretty self-explanatory. He has rush and he can't be blocked if you put 2 Dawn on him. Again, we are able to manipulate some of our rested Dawn, make it a lot more comfortable and cheaper to use him. But even without that, he's overstated, 5 cost 6k. He becomes 7 with the leader. And then if you actually maximize him, get the 2 Dawn on him, he's swinging for 9k, being unblockable. I had him at 4 originally. I decided to bring him down to 3. 3 felt really good. You almost always want to draw him, but drawing too many of him felt worse than not drawing him at times. Because again, you do have a lot of resources that can help rush without him, but he does a really good job closing out games otherwise. Having him at 4 gave me room to run 2 of Shanks himself, and having a 10k body that has rush really is just a fantastic answer for cards like 8 cost Kid, 10 drop Kaido, 9 drop Kaido, things that really do slow down your game. These are bodies that you normally would not be able to take out unless you invest a lot of Dawn, whereas dropping him for 9k, you still have 1 left over if you're maxed out at Dawn to be able to put on Zoro. You're swinging for 11, and then you're also swinging for 6. So it's just a really good card, and with all the 2k and 1k counters we have in the deck, it's just hard for your opponent to get rid of them if they're able to survive. Going into the events, I have 3 Red Zoro. It is the only counter event I have in the deck. The counter is great, but usually I'm not saving the Dawn for it. I mostly like it for when it's hit in life. That 10k reduction trigger effect essentially just ends your opponent's turn. A lot of times they're going to stack on 1 body, and once that guy is negated, it pretty much negates all the Dawn they committed for that turn. And last but not least, we have the Jet Pistol. Jet Pistol is your quintessential red removal card. Anything 6k or less is fair game. And then with the power reduction that Otama provides, you can bring down 7k Dofis, 9k Mihawks. If you're able to double Otama, you can even bring out 10k Kaido. It really does just clear the board from threats that would stop you otherwise. And this pretty much can target any blocker in the game. All right, I appreciate you guys sticking through for the deck profile. Got the cards laid out here so you can see the ratios from a high level, just what the deck looks like, face value, and you guys can play around with the ratios. This is what I found worked for me. Like I said, what I would change is maybe switch out the Gordons for some more of the 2k counter Sanjis. I do want to find some room for Diablo Jambos, so these are probably the first things I would cut. and really add to the pushing power and play off that unblockable feel. I mean, this deck really does just make you feel powerful because you're constantly throwing big bodies or just bodies that your opponent can't handle, and anything that's going to facilitate that is just really going to make you have a good time and help you win more consistently. This deck's only going to get better moving forward, definitely into set 2. I'm looking forward to the new Whitebeard cards. So why don't you guys comment down below what you think about the ratios, what you think about the deck in general, what you're excited to play. I mean, you guys coming back really does help the channel grow. Drop a like, subscribe, and keep a lookout for more One Piece content that we got coming out for you. And be on the lookout for us on other social media platforms because we got big plans moving forward. Appreciate it, guys. Cheers.